Patriot can't stop everything anymore. For decades, the Patriot missile system was supposed to do one thing better than anything else in the world: stop ballistic missiles. But in Ukraine, something unexpected is happening. Russian missiles are getting harder to intercept, Ukraine is firing more interceptors per target, and NATO is quietly paying attention. Because what is happening in the skies over Ukraine may be changing the future of missile defense itself. Ukraine's air war is exposing the limits of the West's most trusted missile shield, and quietly rewriting the future of air defense. For decades, the Patriot air defense system occupied a rare place in Western strategy, not merely a weapon, but a reassurance. It was what governments bought when they wanted to signal seriousness, alliance credibility, and technological belonging. To deploy Patriot was to announce membership in a club whose defining assumption was simple: Western air defense works. That assumption is now being stress-evaluated in the skies above Ukraine. According to recent European assessments, interception effectiveness against some Russian ballistic threats has declined markedly from earlier levels, once estimated at 40%. Ukrainian operators increasingly need multiple interceptors per incoming missile. Russian systems are maneuvering more aggressively in terminal phases. And the cost-exchange ratio between attacker and defender is drifting in the wrong direction. None of these means Patriot has failed. It does mean something more consequential: the strategic environment in which Patriot was designed to dominate is disappearing. Ukraine is not merely defending itself. It reveals the future limits of Western missile defense, the system that defined an era. The Patriot was never supposed to be perfect. But it was designed to be decisive enough. Its original logic belonged to a particular moment in military history: the late Cold War transition from massed air forces to precision-guided strike warfare. The Patriot's purpose was not to defeat everything. It was to defeat enough to preserve command centers, air bases, and political confidence. It worked well enough in the Gulf Wars to become mythology. Later upgrades, especially the PAC-3 interceptor, extended its mission toward ballistic missile defense. Export demand followed predictably. From Central Europe to the Gulf, Patriot became infrastructure rather than equipment. Countries did not merely deploy Patriot, they organized their strategic expectations around it. The result was an architecture of reassurance stretching from the Baltic to the Persian Gulf, an invisible perimeter built on radar tracking, interceptor probability curves, and alliance trust. Ukraine is now testing how durable that perimeter really is. The sky Ukraine has, wars are rarely fought under the conditions systems were designed for. Ukraine's airspace is a case study in why Russian strike packages increasingly combine cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, loitering drones, decoys, and electronic interference into coordinated attack waves. These are not isolated targets approaching neatly separated engagement zones. They are layered saturation problems. The defender must decide quickly what to intercept first, what to intercept later, and what cannot be intercepted at all. Patriot performs best when the geometry is stable and the engagement envelope predictable. Ukraine's skies are neither. Russian missile upgrades now appear to include terminal phase maneuvering features designed specifically to degrade interceptor accuracy. Tracking solutions that once remained stable now shift late in flight. The result is not failure, but uncertainty, and uncertainty is expensive. The mathematics of discomfort. Missile defense is not a duel between machines. It is a contest between budgets. A single Patriot interceptor costs several $million. Many incoming threats do not. If 2 or 3 interceptors are needed per engagement, the defender's arithmetic becomes unsustainable long before the attackers do. Strategists have a polite term for this problem: defense cost asymmetry. Ukraine has a more direct one: running out. The difficulty is not that Patriot cannot intercept advanced missiles. It is that doing so repeatedly requires resources at a scale few states, even alliances, can keep indefinitely. The uncomfortable implication is that air defense superiority is no longer simply technical, it is financial. Russia's quiet adaptation cycle. Western commentary often treats technological advantage as static. Ukraine's battlefield suggests otherwise. Russian missile forces have not stood still. They have adjusted trajectories, timing patterns, and strike coordination. Terminal maneuvers complicate radar solutions. Mixed salvos increase decision pressure. Lower-cost platforms absorb interceptors meant for higher-value threats. This is not revolutionary innovation. It is an evolutionary adaptation, but evolutionary adaptation is precisely what wins long wars. Each intercepted missile teaches the attacker something about radar response time, interceptor allocation, and engagement doctrine. Each successful penetration teaches even more. Over time, missile defense becomes a conversation between systems. Russia is taking part actively in that conversation, a laboratory nobody planned. No NATO country describes Ukraine as a test range. Yet it is functioning as one. The war has created the first sustained, high-intensity air defense environment in Europe since the Cold War, against an adversary capable of iterative missile redesign. Systems deployed include Patriot, NASAMS, and IRIS-T. Each is being evaluated under conditions planners once modeled but rarely seen at scale. The lessons appearing are already shaping procurement debates across NATO. The most important lesson is deceptively simple: no single layer of defense is enough. The Gulf déjà vu. Ukraine is not the first theater to expose Patriot's cost problem. States facing missile threats from Iran have long reported similar engagement dynamics. Interceptors were effective, but expensive. Multiple interceptors were often needed. Attackers adjusted tactics accordingly. These experiences did not undermine confidence in Patriot. They reformed expectations. Instead of serving as an impenetrable shield, Patriot became a selective protection tool, best used to defend assets whose survival justified the expense. Ukraine is accelerating that reframing process, Europe's uncomfortable discovery. Across Europe, Patriot acquisitions once signaled strategic certainty. Poland bought Patriot. Germany expanded Patriot deployments. Romania integrated Patriot into national defense planning. The Netherlands reinforced its missile defense commitments. Each purchase assumed that Patriot stood for the backbone of continental ballistic missile defense. That assumption is now evolving. If maneuvering missiles reduces interception probability, Europe's defensive architecture becomes less about owning Patriot and more about integrating it with something else: sensor fusion, distributed tracking, lower-cost interceptors, directed energy systems. In short, ecosystems, not platforms. Europe is discovering that it bought a shield. What it needs is a network. The myth of the perfect interceptor. For decades, missile defense rested on a powerful intuition: if interceptors become correct enough, defense becomes dependable enough. Ukraine is quietly dismantling that intuition. Accuracy still matters, but engagement geometry now matters more. So does timing. So does cost. So does inventory depth. So does adversary adaptation. The interceptor is no longer the center of the system, the architecture is. And architectures evolve more slowly than threats. Saturation as strategy. The most effective missile defense system in the world can still be overwhelmed. Saturation attacks exploit this reality. They do not aim to defeat interceptors individually. They aim to exhaust them collectively. Russia's layered strike packages increasingly reflect this logic. Drones arrive first. Cruise missiles follow. Ballistic missiles appear later. Each wave complicates the defender's prioritization decisions. Interceptors are finite. Time is finite. Radar attention is finite. Eventually something gets through. The question is no longer whether penetration occurs. It is what penetrates first. The politics of what gets protected. Missile defense used to be a technical discipline. It is now a political one. No country owns enough interceptors to defend everything. That means every engagement decision has an implicit hierarchy of value. Protect the capital. Protect energy infrastructure. Protect command nodes. Protect airbases. Something must come last. Ukraine's experience makes that hierarchy visible. It reminds policymakers that missile defense is not about cutting risk. It is about distributing it, and allocation is always political. Russia's strategic signal to NATO: the adaptation of Russian missiles carries a message beyond Ukraine. It suggests that Western missile defense is no longer running in a unilateral technological environment. Adversaries see, adjusting, and responding faster than expected. For NATO planners accustomed to technological asymmetry favoring the alliance, this is a subtle but important shift. The implication is not parity. It is contestable. Air defense superiority can no longer be assumed. It must be supported. Maintenance is expensive. The end of the single-system solution. Cold War air defense relied on layered structures but often emphasized flagship systems. Patriot became one of those systems. Today's threat environment punishes that approach. Future architectures increasingly rely on distributed sensors, cheaper interceptors, overlapping engagement zones, real-time data fusion, non-kinetic defensive tools. The goal is not to replace Patriot, it is to prevent reliance on Patriot. That distinction matters. The economics of interception. Air defense is drifting toward a paradox. The more capable interceptors become, the more expensive they become. The more expensive they become, the less often they can be used. The less often they can be used, the less strategically decisive they become. Ukraine is living inside that paradox. Every engagement is technically impressive, every engagement is financially uncomfortable. Laser dreams and practical realities. European planners increasingly discuss directed energy systems as a future solution. Lasers promise cheaper shots, deeper magazines, and faster engagement cycles, but promises are not deployments. For now, Patriot and its equivalents stay the backbone of ballistic missile defense. Directed energy stays an aspiration rather than an infrastructure. Ukraine therefore stands for an interim phase in missile defense history, a moment when threats have evolved faster than the systems designed to stop them. History rarely pauses politely while modern technology catches up. The alliance credibility question. Missile defense systems do more than intercept threats. They signal commitment. Deploying Patriot communicates alliance solidarity. Removing it communicates vulnerability. Upgrading it communicates resolve. If Patriot's performance envelope is narrowing, alliance messaging becomes more complicated. Deterrence depends partly on belief. Belief depends partly on visible capability. Visible capability now depends partly on adaptation speed. And adaptation speed is becoming the new currency of credibility. Ukraine's lesson for smaller states: most countries cannot afford large interceptor inventories. Many cannot sustain repeated high-intensity engagements. Ukraine proves what that means in practice. Air defense becomes selective rather than comprehensive. Infrastructure protection becomes episodic rather than permanent. Deterrence becomes probabilistic rather than absolute. This does not make defense impossible, it makes it conditional. The quiet transformation of missile defense doctrine. Military doctrines rarely change dramatically. They drift. Ukraine is accelerating that drift. The emerging doctrine emphasizes resilience over impermeability, distribution over concentration, and adaptation over optimization. Instead of building thicker shields, planners are building wider networks. Instead of preventing every strike, they are ensuring recovery after strikes. Instead of cutting vulnerability, they are managing it. That is not defeatism, it is realism. The lifespan of a gold standard, no weapon system stays dominant indefinitely. The Patriot has survived longer than most. It is still effective. It is still deployable. It is still trusted, but trust is evolving. Ukraine is not proving Patriot obsolete, it is proving Patriot contextual. Systems once considered universal solutions are becoming specialized tools within broader defensive ecosystems. The gold standard is still gold, it is simply no longer enough on its own, a networked future replacing a singular shield. The most important transformation underway is conceptual. Missile defense is no longer about building a perfect interceptor, it is about building responsive architecture. Sensors talk to sensors. Launchers share tracking data. Cheaper interceptors manage cheaper threats. Expensive interceptors stay reserved for critical targets. Directed energy systems eventually close the gap between cost and volume. The shield becomes a web. Ukraine is showing what happens when the web is still under construction, and for Europe, and much of the Western alliance system, that construction has only just begun.